Let's be clear. In men, depression can look like anything but depression. Men's mental health is finally something that, as a society, we are concerned about. Every time I upload a video about this topic, hundreds of men share their experiences in the comments and honestly encourage me to keep spreading awareness about this. So today we're talking about what I consider to be one of the central problems. Look, we associate depression with sadness, hopelessness, guilt, apathy, crying, with loss of functionality, the classic staying in bed almost all day, right? Today you'll learn that some depressions look like this, while many others don't. Others look like working 12 hours from Monday to Saturday, training to exhaustion, excessive ambition, hypersexuality, 4 beers on a Tuesday afternoon, aggressiveness, sarcasm, coldness, disconnection. And today we're going to pay attention to these last ones, and we'll call it hidden depression just so we understand each other, even though it's not a strictly scientific term. You have to understand that it's not that there are men's depressions and women's depressions, but like in many other biological illnesses, like heart attacks for example, depression tends to express itself differently in men and women. This is called sexual dimorphism. It's not that men don't suffer or that they handle stress better, as people sometimes broadly claim. It's that men channel their suffering into behaviors not associated with seeking help or showing vulnerability. Crying, giving up, going to therapy, seeking emotional support, calling a friend, and so on. Men generally transform suffering into irritability, more work, alcohol, drugs, risk-taking, excessive control, or simply silence and distancing themselves from others. That's why the therapist Terence Real, whom I recommend you read, in fact I recommend this book called I Don't Want to Talk About It, says this, right? Many men don't come to therapy saying they're depressed. They say, I don't know what's wrong, but I can't enjoy anything, nobody can stand me, and I always need to shut my mind off. So if you relate to this, watching this video until the end will probably help you a lot. I say this from the heart. First, ask yourself why depression shows up differently in us. You need to answer this question to move forward. Well, it's because many illnesses change how they show up depending on cultural variables and dynamics we're exposed to from birth. In this case, the most accepted theory about the origin of this gender disparity has to do with the roles we adopt as our own. What is the role? The one most often taken on by men is that of provider and savior. Even though this is slowly changing, it's still the case. Society, even before we're born, expects a series of characteristics that we learn with time and make our own from a young age. The one who must be successful at work, who must be successful with women, who must have a stable job, who must be the emotional anchor for everyone and not show weakness, the one who must... From a young age, boys don't admire vulnerable figures. They admire unbeatable ones and want to be like them at all costs. That's why we like superheroes. In adulthood, this leads to overload, emotional illiteracy, difficulty admitting illness, and seeking treatment very late. And this isn't just an opinion, there's plenty of evidence for it. And we're not saying here, I see you, that providing for or taking care of others or working or being responsible is a bad thing. What's bad is being a victim of that label and letting it get in the way of seeking help when you really need it. Another problem is that classic diagnostic scales focus on internal symptoms, the ones that come to mind when you talk about depression. Sadness, crying, anhedonia, lack of motivation, cognitive deficits, and many others. But they overlook more masculine forms of expression. Anger, risk-taking, irritability, addictions, violence, insomnia, impulsivity, for example. In fact, when we include these behaviors in the diagnosis, the differences in the prevalence of depression between men and women disappear. Traditionally, they have been heavily skewed toward women. It has always been said that women have up to 10 times higher prevalence of depression than men. But here, when we take these externalizing factors into account, they become equal. That is, men don't get depressed less, we get depressed differently. On the other hand, as a society, it's easier for us to empathize with and help those who show typical symptoms, like sadness. But honestly, it's very difficult to empathize with someone who is violent, angry, distant, or cold. So the social rejection, both anticipated by the person and shown by society, ends up isolating us even more. There are major contributing factors here, such as a history of trauma and abuse, including childhood sexual abuse, which is much more common than we think. But be careful, there are also perfectly happy childhoods, totally functional families, and men who, for 1,000 different reasons, end up needing help. Strict categories exclude many seeking help as they're overlooked or dismissed. For example, people wonder how someone could be depressed if life seems good. This shows a clear failure in identifying and diagnosing the problem. But not only that, society not only fails to detect, but sometimes even rewards compensatory behaviors in men. And this is what's truly perverse. A hypersexual man is not frowned upon, and in certain environments, he's even applauded. Oh, you've been with 4 women this week? I'm jealous. But hypersexuality, pornography, and any other addictive tendency are nothing more than a self-destructive escape. Work addiction and never stopping, the Elon Musk model of working 16 hours a day, is generally quite admired and applauded. Or muscle dysmorphia disguised as discipline, where social media heavily rewards seeing a man stay lean year-round at 6% body fat and train 4 hours a day. Also, misunderstood stoicism, or the savior complex, where someone takes on the problems of their whole family, friends, and company, forgetting about themselves, something I see very often. Unfortunately, many men don't ask for help. Others choose the most dramatic ending. You know what I mean. But we also have to be optimistic because many others are starting to let themselves be helped. It's hard to express what you're experiencing without a professional's guidance, whether it's depression, anxiety, or phobias. An existential crisis, ADHD, it doesn't matter. And actually, in case it helps any follower, I wanted to share my personal experience with therapy. I, like many others, thought that I would never go to a psychologist. Not because I was opposed to it, I just never considered that I would need it. I was doing really well, working a lot, and there wasn't any big, obvious problem, right? But deep down, I knew or was starting to sense that not everything was okay. There was, how can I put it, an underlying discomfort that was getting louder and louder. For years, I kept sweeping that discomfort under the rug, and I buried many changes in my life and many losses, some expected and others unexpected. Why did I bury them? Well, to get them out of my conscious mind so I could keep working, producing, growing. But of course, the problem just kept getting bigger, right? In that context, some people around me encouraged me to go to therapy. Later, I found a good psychologist who turned out to be a better opponent than yesterday and helped me put into words what I was feeling, what was happening to me, and today, almost 2 years later, I consider myself, I can tell you, a better person and also more self-sufficient with more ability than before. Not weaker, far from it, in fact, quite the opposite, much stronger. Also, personally, and this is my opinion, I don't think you need big or complex interventions to improve and to improve a lot. Just going is therapy in itself. The fact of sitting in a space where you know that for the first time in your life nothing is expected of you, that alone is a lot. It's therapy. And what helped me move forward the most was having someone who helped you put into words what you're feeling and build a coherent narrative of everything that's happening in your life and in your mind. That ties in perfectly with this video's sponsor, BetterHelp, and we'd like to thank them. BetterHelp is an online platform where you can easily access a licensed psychologist to start therapy. It's fully online and adapted to your life and schedule, so accessing therapy is quite simple. You fill out a brief questionnaire and in a few days, you are assigned a psychologist. If they don't suit you for any reason, you can switch at no extra cost. BetterHelp makes it easy to work with a psychologist from home or wherever you prefer, by video call, phone, or chat. And with this link, you can enjoy a 10% discount on your first month of therapy. I'll leave it in the description and in the pinned comment. You'll find it's an investment no one regrets. If you've been in therapy for a while, please share your experience in the comments. Going back to the video, many of you don't know if what you're feeling is normal or if you need some kind of help, and maybe what I'm about to tell you will help you clarify that. The first warning sign is not knowing what's wrong, just feeling you're not okay. We can call this emotional suppression, functional alexithymia. Obviously, you don't do it consciously, you don't want to be unable to express yourself, you'd like to put what you feel into words, but you can't. The second would be the drive toward rigid self-sufficiency. No matter what, I can handle this. I won't tell my family or friends about my problems, so I don't burden them. I'll deal with it myself. How? Well, by training more in the best-case scenario, or by drinking, or with any of the other externalizing behaviors we've mentioned. Third, you gradually start isolating yourself. This happens slowly. You find yourself growing colder, more distant, and even disconnected from close relationships. Isolation is fuel for the problem, connection is the complete opposite. And this is a vicious cycle. Feeling bad makes us hide who we are, and hiding ourselves leads to superficial relationships. Superficial relationships make us feel lonely, and feeling lonely makes us feel bad. Fourth, despite what people think, sometimes being depressed doesn't make you do badly at work or in your sport. It's actually the opposite. Highly functional men tend to focus as much as possible on the areas of life they can control in this context, and this is usually work or some kind of hobby where they excel. Sports are also a very common outlet. In this sense, we have a person who, even though they're worse than ever, can actually be doing better than ever. It may seem contradictory, but that's the reality. That's why we need to make this video. If years go by and nothing is done about it, you start to lose control over externalizing behaviors. In other words, behaviors you used to control start to get out of your control. Drinking, eating, using social media, pornography, seeking validation through your appearance, through sex, shopping, gambling, this is where addictive patterns begin. The thing is, depression and addiction are closely related. Sometimes it starts with very subtle things like opening a beer on a Tuesday night when you're feeling down. The next week, it's not just Tuesday, it's Wednesday too. The following week, it's 3 days. The next week, it's 4 more beers on Thursday. And eventually, this turns into a problem. Finally, it can reach a point that we have to avoid at all costs. You start thinking that others would be better off without you, or you fantasize about disappearing. There are many signs that are very subtle and that only become noticeable when you actively look for them. Your partner, children, and friends notice you're acting strangely, sleeping poorly, and avoiding home due to anxiety. You need dopamine all the time, you don't enjoy anything. Think about all of this. But the most important thing is that once you realize things aren't going well and you admit it, you need to have an exit plan. And here, obviously, the central point is therapy, working with a therapist. But you're also going to have to work a lot on yourself, and for a long time as well. And remember that working on yourself doesn't necessarily mean making more money or seeking applause. It's about working on yourself, getting to know yourself better. Some of the actions that will definitely help you, and I repeat, they have to go hand in hand with your therapy, include learning to put words to what's going on inside you. Take this as a skill, as a superpower, just like learning anything else. Knowing how to express what makes you feel uncertain, what makes you feel weak, ugly, handsome, what you want, what you don't want, what you think about your family, what you think they think about you, and how much that really matters to you. This is already very therapeutic, and we haven't been taught how to do it. Second, and if I have to choose just one point, it's this: truly building a support network. Men in general have scarce, weak, and superficial support networks. Very superficial, instrumental friendships. I only stick around if you add something to my life. And they usually, in addition, leave maintaining these bonds as their last priority, especially when they are in a stable relationship or have a stable family unit. But I'm telling you, your support network is like emotional life insurance and a key pillar of your health now and in the future. And my recommendation is that you don't wait until you're at your lowest point to build them. I would also tell you to start shifting toward less harmful, self-regulating or compensatory behaviors. Yes, exercise is usually a classic one here. But also a walk on the beach, just meeting up to chat with friends, journaling. Let me remind you about this video. Playing chess or listening to music, it doesn't matter, there are many others. What I mean is, don't just use one compensatory behavior. We need to self-regulate, but with things that don't harm us. The next tip is to take care, now more than ever, of your physical health. This means that your habits, when you're not feeling well, need to be as good as possible. You need to be very careful with your habits. You know that what you eat, how you sleep, and how much you move will make you feel better or worse, so they're included as part of the therapy. Finally, distinguish a defined clinical problem from a personal failure or weakness. This has nothing to do with weakness, just like cancer is not a weakness. And just as we shouldn't turn cancer patients into heroes, we shouldn't turn psychiatric patients into weak people. Being used to pain and suffering doesn't mean you're okay. Ask yourself, how much of your life are you missing today by enduring, staying silent, performing, and not questioning things further? If you identified with this video, don't let it be forgotten. Take action. And also comment, because the comment section, at least on this channel, is a space where no one expects absolutely anything from you. Take care. See you next video. Keep going.